I'm happy to see this group together. We wanted to have a little discussion about what we think should be done with the Confederate sailor statue on the county courthouse square on 21st Street. So I'm going to start off with Kenneth MacPherson. He has been doing quite a bit of research on this. And Kenneth, can you tell us where it stands vis-a-vis the county commissioners, et cetera?
Okay, so this morning I spoke with Diana Martinez. She's the office coordinator in County Judge Mark Henry's office. And I got the details from her about citizens speaking at a county commissioner's court meeting. And the next court meeting is on July 27th. I plan to go and be a speaker. It is not determined at this date where that meeting will occur, if it will occur at the courthouse on Galveston Island or at the Calder Street Annex in League City. And the reason that the meeting the last two times has occurred at Calder Street is because early voting was occurring at the courthouse. And so they were using the room for voting. And she doesn't know with COVID where the meeting will occur, but it will be posted on 72 hours before the meeting. She did tell me that the dignified resignation, which is the sailor monument, the Jim Crow Confederate sailor monument, has not been on the agenda in 2020. Now, the importance of the item being on the agenda is this: if the item is on the agenda, the court can respond to people who are speaking. If the item's not on the agenda, the court only receives what the citizen wants to say. But for it to be a two-way communication back and forth, it has to be on the agenda. The deadline for the item being added to the agenda is the next Tuesday, the 21st at 5 p.m. And so citizens can show up. They have 3 minutes to speak. As many people who want to speak, each person gets 3 minutes. And there were speakers at the last court session on the 13th of July. County Judge Mark Henry allows speakers to speak at the beginning of the meeting, even if the item's not on the agenda, as long as they show up and check in with the county clerk, Brandy Chapman, there when they get there. And if they show up late, then before the meeting is over, he asks for speakers again. And so if you get there early, you'll speak early. If you get there during the meetings going on, you'll speak before the meeting is over. And I do plan to be a speaker, and I know of one other person from Texas City who's going to go and be a speaker on the 27th. Okay. That's my update.
All right, and do we know if it's going to be on the agenda? Do we have to call the county commissioners and urge them to put it on?
Yes, I have called Mr. Gusty's office, and who is my the county commissioner for my precinct, and I've asked that it be asked him to put it on. We do know, since I spoke with Diana there in Mark Henry's office, that it's not on the agenda yet. She has not received a request as of just a few minutes ago. Okay. She said that it's not uncommon for her to get requests right up to that 5 o'clock Tuesday deadline.
Okay.
But she does need to get the request for it to be on the agenda. And I think it's very important that it be on the agenda, because the way that it plays out, if it's an agenda item, then they can make a decision on it. They can say, no, we don't want to go any further with it. Yes, we want to workshop the item. And that means that the commissioners amongst themselves talk further about it. And so they could defer it. And then after they workshop it, the item comes back to the court, and ultimately a vote would be taken. But we need to get this moved forward so that a vote will be taken.
And can a single commissioner put it on the agenda, like Stephen Holmes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so he's a Democrat. We could approach him and ask him to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's,
all right.
it's very imperative that we get it on the agenda.
Yeah. I want to welcome Robin Twymon, I believe, to the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Dr. Robin Twymon.
Hello, how are you?
It's a beautiful day.
Yes, it is. Nice rain. Well, you heard most of that introduction. That was an update from, and we are Galveston Island Democrats. We've changed the name from Galveston County Democratic Club, which was the oldest Democrat group in the state, according to many. And so there are other island or mainland groups that were working hard, and we decided to concentrate on the island. But we just want to be involved in a lot of issues, and this is one of them. So Dr. Twymon, if you would like to start off, do you have thoughts about this Confederate statue and what it should happen to it, what should be done with it?
Well, okay. That's loaded, but to start off, first of all, excuse my tardiness. I am an educator, and I was on a Zoom meeting trying to prepare for the upcoming school year.
No problem.
Okay. My first start is, let's not say it doesn't deserve to have history, because the first thing everybody's saying is it's history, and it is, and let's acknowledge it as history. But if we're going to acknowledge it as history, we can't pick and choose what we acknowledge and what we disregard. So when we say we go ahead to acknowledge what it is, then we have to talk about what it actually stood for in that time of history. And is that a painful history that we want to constantly remind not just the citizens of Galveston, but just the people itself that go in and out of that courthouse in that area to be reminded of the oppression? That's one stance. The other stance is, do we want the world, the country, to know that we did not take any action when the movement and the time so effectively says we need to remove these things? So many people have been progressive in removing the statues and taking care of those things, and taking care of those situations, but we don't want to be not part of the forefront of handling that. So we must be proactive, not just as citizens of the island, but as just citizens of the country itself, to say that we are trying to be proactive and do what's best, not just for one race of people, but for all people. We won't look at this in any other systemic way of just saying it's blatant and it's bad racism that's out there all the way around. So it's about oppression. It's about one people or one type of individuals that are out there that want to be in a superior fashion, and we don't have to stand for it anymore. Our voice should be heard.
Thank you very much. I haven't introduced the rest of the people formally. Alice Wilson, can you raise your hand, please? And then there is Sylvia Longoria, and Kenneth, you've met, and then Roxy is down in the other corner. There we go. And I think you know Mr. Phillips.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm Kevin Moran. I've been here on the island since '81, and I was a reporter for the Houston Chronicle and covered the commissioners every single week. So All right. So Alice, can you tell us, you were one of the people who was in our group who was most interested in talking about this. Can you tell us what you feel, what you think about this
Right.
statute situation?
Well, sure. First of all, I hear from people, you know, the same argument that Dr. Twymon was saying about that this is history. But I think that this is false history because it glorifies something that wasn't, you know, it uses the terms that this was a pure motive, that you know, and it uses courage. It tends to, and I pardon the pun, whitewash history with this idea that these people were pure of motive, and that the courage that they showed was really something that we should all celebrate. So I also view this through the eyes of a 9-year-old African-American girl. And I think, how would she feel? Would she feel like this was a joyful statement of inclusion and delight in her citizenship? And I can't say that could possibly be the case. And so I think that when we look at it, this is not the title of it alone, dignified, resignation. Resignation means that you are accepting something reluctantly. And that just really drives me crazy. You know, we are not, and it also, the idea that this was a dignified response, you know, that at this point in time when that statue was erected, there was no resignation in the South. There was no dignity. There were lynchings. There were Jim Crow laws being put into effect. And so it feels like this thing would require a docent to be standing next to it to tell people the truth. And we're not going to have that happen, obviously. So I think that it has to be removed from the public square. Personally, I don't really care where it goes, but other than the fact that I don't think it should be in a public location where taxpayers are paying for it, and it's sitting right now in front of one of the only really strong symbol on our island of what our government stands for. So in order to enter into your civic duty, you have to pass by this false representation and hurtful representation. That's really all I've thought.
If I could jump in and give one little tidbit of knowledge in here for a moment. Be ever so mindful that when people say history and they read history, history is written by the one who wins.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you were actually right. Just because you won a particular issue or time or what it may be in that time frame, you wrote history how you wanted to read out. And you tell everyone else they should follow that history. But that is false history. So when we said it, when Alice said it that way, we have to be so mindful that when people say it was history, yeah, okay, but you wrote it the way you wanted to write, to be what elegant ways that you should say. But let's be real. Because if we really want to talk about history, and everybody, I'm assuming, is in here is in a Christian form, let's just look at the Bible and look at all of the persons in the Bible. And since those members supposedly are Christians, kind of funny.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, what are your first thoughts on this?
I'm listening to what everybody is saying, and there's always pros and cons of any issue. Actually, up until the time I had a conversation with Eddie Jennings, and this was way back. I'm talking about 09, 010, something like that, when they were talking about restoring the statute. He wanted to know if I had any objections to them restoring it. And at the time I told him no. I didn't have any objections to them restoring it as long as they could put the same emphasis on a statue of Jack Johnson that we were trying to get built. It was like a trade-off. But here of late, the issue has taken on a strong resemblance to, if we can erase this history by erasing these symbols, we can change what happened. You can't change history. That's why it's called history. It's a part of your past. The Civil War was a part of our past. A lot of what had to do with the Civil War had a lot to do with slavery. Abraham Lincoln wanting the slaves freed. But it also had a big thing to do with our economy, the economy of the country. Because one of the 5 ordinances that he brought down from Washington, one of them talked about the Confederate money that were in the northern banks and that it would be taken. And I can imagine how an Anglo man who is a multimillionaire on Galveston Island, who dealt with cotton or sugar cane or any products that were brought in by ship, would feel about the northern part of the United States who won the Civil War confiscating all of their cash. So it takes on a different look when you look at this statue that has been there. I'm 72 years old, and I'm quite sure it's been there the entire time that I've been on this earth. But until Eddie Jennings and I had this conversation, had I ever paid any attention to that statue? It was there. Maybe it symbolized to some that it represented something good, how they fought for what they believed in. What I don't really understand is the daughters of the Confederacy are the ones who actually paid for the statue to be put there. I didn't have any. You have to understand, I'm an African-American male. There are not very many tables that African-Americans sit at back then where it was a decision-making table. So who made the decision? I had nothing to do with it. The statue to them, like Robin was saying, it represents a part of history. And you can't erase history just by taking away a statue. Maybe maybe the daughters of the Republic ought to be looking for a building to buy, and they can store all of their memorabilia from the past in there and have a museum, you know, of their
That's
statue.
what I said. They put them up. They should be the ones that have to gather them up and put them up somewhere, or blow them up, or whatever they want to do with them.
And that not only goes for our little Galveston Island, that goes for across the United States. You can't take their history away from them. But what you can do is you can make sure that it's housed somewhere where people that want to see it can go and see it and not out in public view.
Excellent. Excellent point.
And not my tax dollars. My tax dollars should not be going to maintain and keep that up or whatever else everybody's talking about. I don't want to pay for that. So they can have it. They can take it. They can do whatever they want with it. But my tax dollars shouldn't have to go to the maintenance of that kind of so-called history.
Okay.
Your tax dollars don't go for maintaining it. That was the conversation that Eddie and I had way back then. They were raising funds to
I still don't want to see it. I shouldn't have to be subjugated to that.
I agree with you on that point. Now that I know, let me give you a good example of where this wisdom comes from. Did you know that on the corner of 27th and M at Old Central Cultural Center,
Yes.
above the door,
Yes.
there is some written in concrete that says, colored branch of the Rosenberg Library. I didn't know that was there until 1997 when I moved back to Galveston.
Really?
I had never paid attention to it.
I've known that since 1981.
That has as much reflection or meaning as that statue to me.
It does.
I mean, I'm of this opinion. If you're going to acknowledge that that is the colored branch of the Rosenberg Library, why aren't you taking some of that money you're using to restore Rosenberg Library to restore Central, to
There you
make
go.
Central of the grandeur that it ought to be, and make it
Yes.
something where individuals,
Yes.
African Americans, can go and learn about your culture.
I agree.
Why is it that in order for us to learn about African American culture from the Rosenberg Library, we have to go up on the 4th floor to their archives? Why isn't it something that's publicly viewed? African Americans actually had a great deal to do with Galveston Island being as successful as it is.
Oh, yes.
You look back at Galveston's history, there have always been laborers who worked on these ships, who brought these goods in. Slaves came in on ships and were auctioned off on Galveston Island. Why is it that this history, that this ingrained history that we have on this island isn't acknowledged at all? Why is it that we have a historical foundation who doesn't restore African American history?
I agree with you, and I
have a comment on that. I have a comment on that. The colored branch of the Rosenberg Library. About 2 years ago, the Rosenberg Library had a historical passport for children. They wanted the children to visit different sites on Galveston Island. And on the passport, one of the sites was the colored branch of the Rosenberg Library. They did highlight it. And, but they really didn't say a whole lot about it. They said less about it than you have shared, you know, kind of thing. And I agree with you. You know, I've never seen it given prominence and, you know, made on the same footing. The thing that bothers me about the statue, it has 2 Confederate flags on it. The Confederate flag was ruled against by our United States Supreme Court in 2015. And that statue was put up in 1911, 46 years after the end of the Civil War. And it is a Confederate sailor, not a specific sailor, just a sailor from the Confederate Navy. And so it didn't really go to show that it was not a memorial to a sailor, a specific sailor. That was put up when all of these Jim Crow Confederate monuments were going up. The height of the, you know, putting up monuments was in 1910. So it went up the year after the peak of Confederate monument raising. And it really was to support the whole thing of all the Jim Crow laws, because Texas had 29 Jim Crow laws. And these laws disenfranchised African Americans, and it was part of our hateful past. I don't know why all citizens have to, view that. To me, it's very repressive. Can't we in 2020 come up with something that would be uplifting for all members of the community? African American, Hispanic, white, Asian, all sectors of our, community. Why can't we recognize everybody? We've got a lot of people here on this island that are drawn here for UTMB, and we should make it a welcoming place for everyone.
Galveston is a tourist town. Our whole revenue generating source right now is more on tourism than it is on our shipping industry. So if we're going to take advantage of the enormous history that our island has, we have to acknowledge all history. African American history on this island is in abundance. But as soon as the caretakers die off or disappear, that history is torn down and gone away. Integration, I hate to get off into topics like this because to me, it always takes me back to the history that African Americans have had on this island. Maybe a month ago, a few weeks ago, President or number 45 had a rally in Tulsa. And the topic became how African Americans there had the Wall Street of that era, where African Americans just grew and flourished and rose above Jim Crow, above the Depression, above World War I, World War II, and coming away from the Civil War of being free. Can you imagine what it would be like to be a 30-year-old slave and the very next morning you wake up and you're free? What do you do with that? Galveston is so rich in African American history that there were parts of this city that were carved out for African Americans, but not a tourist bus goes through there because it's all vacant lots or boarded up buildings or nothing that you can relic and say that, man, this really happened here. None of that is here.
Yeah,
They want to do the glorified history, which they feel, and I keep using terms like they because, like I said, I wasn't in the room when they made the rules.
Yeah. But this is, the larger picture is out there, and we definitely want to pursue those kinds of things as well. Sylvia, have you spoken on this?
No, but actually I wasn't going to, but listening to everyone, I want to, because I am a BOI, and I was never proud of being a BOI because of the racism on this island. And being Mexican American, I also faced a lot of prejudices, just like my family did. and I was always amazed that the longshoremen had the black longshore, the Mexican American longshore, and the white longshore, because my father was in the Hispanic group. And it's just, this island has always promoted the segregation. So I just want to say, I moved to Austin, which is definitely a lot more progressive thinking city compared to the rest of Texas, and pretty much all of Texas hates Austin. But what I'm saying is I've moved back to the island because I've met some great people like Kevin and Alice, and now Roxy and Christy, of course. It's time for our island to move forward. We can't live in the past anymore. This island needs to move forward. And now, more than ever, it's the best time to try and push.
I agree.
Stuff like this. It's very important.
Absolutely. And that's,
Ms.
go ahead.
And Ms. Bethany said, it's, I'm a BOI. 1977, when you brought up integration, and I'm an educator, so I'm always going to be chimed up.
I was here then.
Yeah, 1977, Galveston Independent School District integrated and made Central an all 8th grade campus. That was my class. And if I tell you, if you want to talk about history, I'm not talking about just African-American history, I'm just talking about history in general. Galveston was powerful, and because Central was good, and Ball had, the things, and you had some great people come out of there, from Radon Dillon, from Papa Charlie and all these guys that, did some sports. But when that class came in from 77, Galveston went to a whole nother level of a powerhouse. And I'm talking about from academia all the way through athletics. It ran the mainland and ran all the way up through here at the city of Houston. We can celebrate history and talk about the richness that we have of the island and make it more an inviting and inclusive place where it is, yes, a tourist town, but make it where BOIs want to come back home. Because it's so dead with the racism, and there is so much separation in there. But we do have rich history on the island. People ask me all the time about Galveston, and the Galveston, they say, oh, Galveston. I'm like, no, it's Galveston Island. They go there. I'm like, telling you, don't understand. If you're surrounded by 4 bodies of the water, you are a floating island. The only thing that you have attaching yourself to the state of Texas, not to the mainland, to the state of Texas, is acreage. You are an island.
That's right, Robin.
History. And you take that and you sell it and you market it. But you can't market that by telling me you got a Confederate Confederate statue sitting up there, and you won't recognize Joe Johnson, Barry White, some other great people that came through the island that's phenomenal. You can't choose what you want to acknowledge on the island and effectively think you're going to reach all the people that are out there. If you want money, everybody has money, and we can make it grow if we do it together as a fist and not as individuals out here.
I agree. This is we just did a forum with the police chief about his operation and racism in the department. We hope to do one with the police union, but we've got we have wider objectives. And what you just brought up, I've heard before about the Black history on this island. We could arrange a forum and meetings of different kinds in the future with the Historical Foundation. Well, they have an African-American something committee, but it's not all tremendously active. But we can work with them to do just what you said, is to turn people should be going to see the Rosewood Cemetery.
Yeah,
it's got an historical marker on it. It's a graveyard of 444 African Americans from this community, and it's a beautiful little spot. Unfortunately, it's been surrounded by hotels, but that's one thing that we could emphasize. So I agree with you, and we will work on that as well. I think that's a good idea. But let's get back to the statute. Is there anyone here who would like to make kind of a closing statement on this statue.
Well, the statue itself, like I said, let the daughters of the Confederacy find them a building, let them take their statues and store them in the building, let them do all of the advertising that they want to, that people can come from all over the United States and view it. You have to understand, one of the areas that one of the biggest battles of the Civil War that was fought every year, over 200,000 people flocked there to watch them reenact that battle. So there's got to be people that want to view these statues. Let them put them somewhere else. Let them find them a warehouse, build them a warehouse, and do what they want to in all cities across the United States that have these statues and monuments.
Very good. Thank you. And I tell you, ever since I've known about it, and I knew about it almost the day I came here in '81, I have taken every single visitor that I've had and come, my family from Minnesota, Missouri, Florida, and shown them the old Central building. That has been that's one of the things that I have faithfully, and they are all awed by it, because they've never seen anything like it, and it brings home the real, what segregation really was. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all very much. We're gonna be posting this conversation on our Galveston Island Democrats website, and we will be making it available in other venues, and we will be doing this again. So thank you all very much. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you
Thank
all.
you so much.